What if humanity was never divided? No religions, no borders, no nations competing for power. Just one species, moving forward together. For thousands of years, belief systems and borders have shaped our world, inspiring meaning, identity, and culture, but also conflict, war, and division. Trillions of dollars. An immeasurable amount of human effort. Entire generations of the brightest minds spent fighting each other instead of advancing together. But what if all of that energy was redirected? What if humanity invested those trillions and that manpower into medicine, science, and technology? Diseases cured decades earlier, aging slowed or even reversed, human suffering dramatically reduced. What if the same unified focus was applied to space exploration? Permanent colonies beyond Earth. Faster than light theories explored seriously. Humanity no longer confined to a single fragile planet. What about energy, clean, limitless power? Artificial intelligence developed cooperatively, not competitively. Climate science, not ignored or politicized, but solved. A world where progress wasn't slowed by borders. Where knowledge belonged to everyone. Where humanity saw itself not as nations or beliefs, but as a single civilization. This is not a story about what should have happened. This is a question. What if we were never divided? Before we ask what if humanity was never divided, we need to ask a more honest question first. Why did we divide at all? Why religion? Why borders? Why nations? Because these systems didn't appear by accident. They weren't born from hatred or ignorance. They were answers to real problems early humanity faced. Before science, before global communication, before written law, religion played a critical role in humanity's survival. Early human societies needed a way to unite people who were not biologically related. Families could cooperate instinctively, tribes could not. Religion provided shared stories, values, and purpose. It created trust between strangers. It allowed large groups to cooperate, sacrifice, and see themselves as one. Without that shared belief, early societies fractured. Religion also provided moral frameworks. Concepts like right and wrong, justice, duty, and responsibility were formalized through belief. In a world without legal systems or scientific understanding, religion regulated behavior. It reduced internal chaos. It made societies predictable enough to survive. It also offered psychological stability. Early humans lived in constant danger. Death was common. Disease was mysterious. Nature was terrifying. Religion helped people cope with fear, suffering, and the unknown. It offered explanations when none existed. It reduced existential anxiety in an unpredictable world. In its earliest form, religion wasn't about control. It was a survival tool. As human populations expanded, unity wasn't a choice, it was a limitation. Early humanity simply wasn't ready for global coordination. There were no satellites, no instant communication, no way to speak to, represent, or govern people on the other side of the world. A single ruler of all humanity wasn't just unrealistic. It was impossible. In that world, borders and smaller nations became necessary. Without global communication, governance had to be local. Smaller regions allowed leaders to understand their people, respond to problems, and make decisions without months or years of delay. Borders weren't about exclusion. They were about function. They allowed leadership to exist at a scale humans could actually manage. Smaller nations also created stability. Laws could be enforced. Systems could work. Order, justice, and public services developed gradually, tested and refined within controlled populations. This stability gave societies the time and structure they needed to grow. Culturally, economically, technologically, separate nations also allowed different systems to evolve at the same time. Different forms of governance, different legal systems, different economies and cultures. Some failed, some succeeded. Humanity learned by comparison. Progress accelerated not through one fragile system, but through many experiments running in parallel. Borders were not created because humanity wanted division. They existed because, at the time, humanity had no other way to stay organized. In this hypothetical situation, it is the year zero. Humanity does not yet have instant communication. Messages travel by horse, by ship, by runners and pigeons. News can take months to cross the world. But something is different. There is no religion dividing belief, no borders separating identity, and no assumption that progress must come at another's expense. A shared idea exists across humanity, that the species must move forward together. Local regions govern daily life, while a central human council sets long-term direction, not for kingdoms or nations, but for humanity as a whole. Power is limited. Decisions are slow and deliberate. There is no war, no organized conflict, not because humanity agrees on everything, but because it agrees on one thing above all else. Disagreements are handled through dialogue, representation, and time, not violence. Humanity does not move quickly, but it moves together. At the year zero, humanity was already capable, but divided. Civilizations like the Roman Empire, the Han Dynasty, the Parthian Empire, and powerful societies across Africa, India, and the Americas each held fragments of knowledge. That knowledge was rarely shared, often duplicated, and sometimes lost entirely. In this hypothetical world, all of that changes. Without war, knowledge is no longer a strategic asset. It becomes a shared resource. Greek logic, Roman engineering, Chinese metallurgy, Indian mathematics, African medicine. Combined instead of isolated. Ideas no longer disappear with empires. They spread, improve, and build upon one another. By the year 500, humanity establishes standard scientific methods. Shared systems of measurement emerge. Formal research institutions appear centuries earlier than in our history. Progress that once took millennia begins to compound. Medicine becomes humanity's primary investment. With no armies to fund, no weapons to build, and no wars to recover from, healing replaces destruction as civilizations focus. Anatomical study accelerates without religious restriction. Disease is approached empirically, not spiritually. By the year 500, humanity develops early germ theory. Hygiene and sanitation become standard practice. Infant mortality drops dramatically. Life expectancy rises far beyond historical norms. Entire generations grow healthier and smarter. Infrastructure and technology advance without interruption. Roman roads no longer serve legions. They serve trade, medicine, and communication. Chinese engineering is shared globally. Water systems, public sanitation, and urban planning spread rapidly across continents. By the year 500, humanity builds global road and port networks. Early mechanical automation emerges. Metallurgy advances centuries ahead of schedule. Cities grow not as fortresses, but as centers of learning. Social identity begins to shift. Without war and religion, loyalty is no longer tied to tribe, empire, or belief, but to humanity's shared future. Education spreads early and widely. Literacy rises across regions. Talent is recognized and cultivated wherever it appears. By the year 500, humanity functions less like competing empires and more like a single, slowly accelerating civilization. In real history, the year 500 marked collapse, fragmentation, and loss. In this world, it marks consolidation. Humanity is not futuristic, but it is stable, healthy, educated, and unified. The foundations of modern science, medicine, and engineering are not waiting to be rediscovered. They are already being built. This is not a world without struggle. It is a world where struggle is directed inward, toward understanding, not destruction. By the year 500, humanity is no longer a collection of isolated civilizations. It is one system. Knowledge is shared, recorded, tested, and improved without interruption. And once a civilization reaches that point, progress stops being linear. It becomes exponential. In real history, huge breakthroughs often appeared, only to be lost, buried, or ignored for centuries. In this world, that no longer happens. By the year 500, the foundations already exist. And between 500 and 1000, they mature into something recognizable. Science becomes a method, not a miracle. Formal research institutions emerge across the world, consistently funded and openly connected. Experiments are repeated, challenged, and refined. Knowledge is stored in shared reference libraries, not in one city, but across continents. Every discovery becomes immediately usable everywhere. Improvements stack, progress compounds. Engineering and industry surge forward centuries ahead of our timeline. With no war to consume resources, labor is poured into water systems, transport, tools, power sources, and production. The great shift is mechanization. Not sudden steam engines, but widespread practical machines. Wind and water power become the backbone of industry. Workshops use gears, cams, and timed mechanisms. Metals improve. Manufacturing becomes standardized. Bridges, aqueducts, and ports spread across the world. Better tools create better tools. Productivity rises. More people are freed from survival work and turned toward learning and research. Medicine undergoes a quiet revolution. The first 500 years built sanitation, public health rules, anatomical study, and early understanding of disease. Between 500 and 1000, medicine shifts from care to prevention. Clean water infrastructure spreads through major settlements. Quarantines become standard practice, not superstition. Early vaccination-like methods emerge through observation and controlled exposure. Hospitals evolve into learning institutions, training doctors, recording outcomes, and refining treatments. More children survive. More adults live longer. A larger, healthier, educated population accelerates innovation even further. Literacy and information systems explode. Civilization doesn't need instant communication to compound, it needs memory. Basic education becomes widespread. A global administrative language, or tightly standardized translations, allows ideas to move without friction. Massive archives track population, health, agriculture, and engineering. Knowledge no longer dies with individuals. Civilization remembers. Global connectivity becomes routine. Without piracy, war fleets, or hostile borders, travel and trade grow safer and more predictable. Permanent intercontinental exchange networks form. Navigation is standardized. Accurate world maps emerge centuries early. Ports, lighthouses, and roads are built for cooperation, not conquest. A discovery in one region becomes a global upgrade within a generation, not centuries later. Energy and early physics advance rapidly. With no religious taboo, anatomy, astronomy, disease, and natural phenomena are studied openly. Natural philosophy transforms into early physics and chemistry. Humanity gains a stronger understanding of motion, mechanics, and materials. Practical chemistry spreads soaps, disinfectants, alloys, acids, and alkalis used intentionally. Optics improve as lenses emerge earlier through skilled craftsmanship and curiosity. Science becomes useful. Usefulness attracts investment. Investment accelerates science. In real history, the year 1000 is still largely medieval. In this world, the year 1000 resembles an early industrial civilization, not with modern machines, but with modern thinking. High literacy, strong public health, standardized engineering, research institutions, global cooperation. Humanity isn't futuristic yet, but it is unstoppable. Once a civilization stops burning its progress in war, it doesn't just grow, it compounds. By the year 1000, humanity has crossed a decisive threshold. Civilization no longer depends on shared values or collective goodwill. It depends on systems. Cooperation is no longer an achievement. It is infrastructure. Knowledge does not survive because people protect it. It survives because civilization is designed so that it cannot be lost. No war can erase progress. No region can isolate itself long enough to fall behind. Failure still occurs, but it is absorbed, measured, and corrected. Between the years 1000 and 1500, progress changes its nature. Discovery continues, but the greater transformation comes from prediction, optimization, and long-term planning. Human health becomes a managed system. Medicine moves beyond prevention into population-level control. Disease is tracked continuously across regions and seasons. Outbreaks are detected early through routine reporting, not fear. Containment is automatic, coordinated, and temporary. Pandemics no longer threaten civilization itself. They become logistical challenges, interruptions, not resets. Human lifespan rises steadily, not through sudden cures, but through cumulative control of water, nutrition, hygiene, housing, and disease. Living into old age becomes normal. Generations overlap longer. Knowledge, skills, and institutional memory persist without interruption. Civilization begins to engineer reliability. Infrastructure is no longer built simply to function, but to endure, to fail safely, and to be repaired without disruption. Bridges, roads, canals, and ports are designed with known lifetimes. Maintenance is scheduled decades and centuries in advance. Redundancy is deliberate, not wasteful. Transportation ceases to be exploratory. It becomes predictable. Land and sea travel operate on stable routes and seasonal cycles. Navigation accounts for weather, climate, and risk with increasing accuracy. The planet functions as a single logistical system. Industry enters a mature phase. Mechanization is no longer new, it is refined. Machines are designed for efficiency, durability, and repairability. Standard measurements and tolerances allow components to be replaced rather than rebuilt. Mechanical power from water and wind is distributed deliberately, not opportunistically. Energy systems are balanced instead of maximized. Civilization learns to avoid strain, scarcity, and collapse, not by limiting growth, but by designing for stability. Environmental management becomes intentional. Forests are treated as renewable systems. Agriculture is guided by long-term soil observation and yield data. Cities are planned to minimize waste, disease, and pollution. Humanity begins managing its footprint centuries before crisis demands it. Science reshapes its role. It is no longer separate from daily life. It becomes the planning layer beneath civilization itself. Physics informs engineering. Biology informs medicine and agriculture. Chemistry informs materials, sanitation, and energy use. Electricity is no longer mysterious. Its behavior is measured, cataloged, and mathematically described. Static charge, attraction, and discharge are studied systematically. Early storage and controlled experiments exist, not yet powerful, but understood. Electricity remains limited not by ignorance, but by materials, precision, and energy density. Humanity knows exactly what it lacks and why. Astronomy advances from observation to prediction. Planetary motion is modeled with growing accuracy. Timekeeping becomes synchronized across continents. Calendars, navigation, and long-term planning align globally. By the late 1400s, humanity turns its attention upward, not in pursuit of conquest, but in pursuit of limits. High-altitude experiments investigate air pressure, temperature, and respiration. Lift, drag, and propulsion are studied empirically. Early gliders and experimental devices probe the boundaries of atmosphere. Humanity is not yet capable of flight beyond short distances. It is not yet capable of leaving Earth. But it is no longer guessing. By the year 1500, civilization stands far ahead of our own historical timeline. Not because of any single invention, but because nothing has been lost. Progress has accumulated without interruption for 15 centuries. Civilization is healthy, educated, resilient, and accelerating. Remove war from history, and progress does not simply move faster. It compounds into a fundamentally different civilization. By the year 1500 in this timeline, humanity has already achieved something our real history never did. A single, unified civilization. Stable institutions that outlive individuals. High literacy across populations. Strong public health. Standardized engineering. And global cooperation as the default state of existence. From that point onward, progress no longer merely continues. It compounds. Every generation begins further ahead than the last. Every discovery spreads everywhere. And none of it is erased by war, collapse, or ideological shutdown. From 1500 to the present day, the world changes beyond recognition. By the time humanity reaches what we would call the modern era, the greatest difference is not technology. It is biology. Centuries of uninterrupted medicine, global health systems, and cooperative science transform the human body itself. Infectious diseases are brought under near total control. Illness is detected early through continuous monitoring and universal screening. Organs are repaired, regenerated, or replaced as routine medical practice. Genetics is used preventively, correcting inherited conditions before symptoms ever appear. Cancer is no longer a singular enemy. It is understood as a collection of cellular failures, most prevented, many corrected automatically, and the remainder treated as manageable conditions. Cancer ceases to be a leading cause of death. Average lifespan rises far beyond our own timeline, not because of miracle cures, but because humanity has had centuries longer to perfect prevention, early intervention, and biological repair. So, has humanity cured death? Not entirely. Accidents still happen. Catastrophic injuries still occur. Some biological limits remain. But death from disease becomes rare. Aging itself is no longer treated as inevitable decline. It becomes a biological process, slowed, managed, repaired, and partially reversed. By now, radical life extension is no longer theoretical. Living well past 100 becomes common. Lifespans of 150 years are no longer exceptional. Old age is no longer a sudden collapse. It becomes a long, gradual phase, monitored, treated, and sustained. Not immortality, but a world where biology is no longer the default cause of death. Medicine, in this timeline, never stalls. In our history, medical progress explodes only in the last century and a half. Here, that acceleration begins centuries earlier and never stops. By the year 1500, leadership no longer resembles rule. There are no kings, no nations, no elections driven by popularity or belief. Leadership has become a function, not a position. Those who guide society are not chosen by persuasion, lineage, or ideology. They are selected through decades of measured competence. From early adulthood, individuals work within institutions that track outcomes, accuracy, and error correction. Their decisions are recorded. Their predictions are tested. Their willingness to revise beliefs is measured as carefully as their successes. Those who seek authority for its own sake never reach it. They are filtered out long before power becomes available. By 1500, authority is temporary, narrow, and continuously audited. No one governs people. They steward systems, health, infrastructure, climate, education. Leadership rotates. Decisions expire. Every action is reversible. There is no reward for holding power. No wealth. No legacy. Only responsibility. Those entrusted with authority share a single mandate: to advance humanity as a whole, not themselves. Progress is not a personal achievement. It is a continuous obligation passed forward, generation by generation. Most people rarely think about leadership at all. The system works quietly in the background, correcting problems before they become crises. Humanity did not eliminate flawed leaders. It eliminated the conditions that allowed flawed leaders to matter. Transportation evolves with the same mindset. Once a global civilization industrializes without war, movement is no longer about conquest. It is about connection. High-speed rail networks span continents. Global shipping becomes fully automated and near perfectly optimized. Aviation evolves into a clean, quiet, efficient system integrated seamlessly with cities. Electric transport dominates early and completely. Movement stops being a privilege. It becomes infrastructure. Industrialization begins earlier in this world, and so does environmental strain. But the response is fundamentally different. There is no denial, no politicization, no competition between nations, no debate over who should sacrifice first. Climate change is recognized early as a technical systems problem and addressed in layers. Dirty fuels are abandoned as soon as better energy becomes viable. Reforestation, soil restoration, and ecosystem management become permanent policy. Cities are redesigned to minimize waste, heat, and pollution. Planet-wide climate monitoring advances centuries ahead of our own timeline. By now, Earth's climate is stabilized, not ignored. Humanity may even possess the capability of active planetary management, restoring damaged ecosystems, reversing long-term harm, and maintaining Earth within safe boundaries. In our world, climate change became a debate. In this world, it became a project. And then there is space. Space is difficult, but a civilization with centuries of uninterrupted science, industry, and cooperative investment reaches it earlier and remains there. Permanent bases exist on the moon. Orbital infrastructure surrounds Earth: shipyards, habitats, research stations. A sustained settlement exists on Mars. Asteroids are mined for materials. Near-Earth space becomes part of the global economy. Travel between Earth orbit, the Moon, and Mars becomes routine. The Moon functions as an industrial and scientific hub. Mars becomes humanity's first true secondary world. Large orbital habitats grow rapidly because they are easier to scale than planets. In our world, space is exploration. In this world, space becomes infrastructure. Physics still matters. Faster than light travel remains uncertain. But propulsion advances far beyond chemical rockets. High-efficiency drives enable deep space missions. Long-duration life support is perfected. Radiation shielding is mastered. Artificial gravity becomes standard in large habitats. Interplanetary travel is routine. Interstellar travel remains difficult, but no longer unthinkable. Humanity launches long-term missions to the outer solar system. Slow interstellar probes, robotic and experimental generation ships are sent toward nearby stars, designed to travel for decades or centuries. Colonize planets? Within the solar system, very likely. Interstellar colonies? Experimental, early steps, not mass expansion. By today, humanity lives in a world where most disease is controlled or eliminated. Aging is delayed and partially reversible. Average lifespan is dramatically higher. Transport is fast, clean, and global. Energy is abundant and stable. Climate is actively managed. Earth is no longer a boundary. It is the home world. And space has become the second domain of civilization. The greatest difference of all is this: humanity no longer advances in bursts between disasters. It advances continuously. In our world, progress fought against war, collapse, and division. In this world, progress fought only one enemy, the unknown. By the year 2500, human civilization no longer advances by breakthrough. It advances by refinement. Most fundamental problems have already been solved. What remains is optimization, scale, and choice. Medicine is no longer reactive. Disease has effectively disappeared as a cause of death, not because pathogens vanished, but because they are detected, neutralized, or corrected before symptoms emerge. Health is continuously monitored at the cellular level. Repair systems operate constantly, invisibly. Organs are no longer treated as irreplaceable. They are maintained, repaired, or regrown as needed. Death from illness is rare. Death from aging is optional. Medicine no longer feels like medicine. It feels like maintenance. Biology becomes a designed system. Human bodies are no longer bound to a single static form. Bone density, muscle strength, immune response, and neural health are adjusted throughout life. Genetic disease is eliminated at conception. Traits are preserved, refined, or explored intentionally. Aging is not stopped, it is managed. Slowed, paused, reversed when necessary. Humans remain recognizably human, but no longer fragile. Energy ceases to be a concept people think about. The primary source is nuclear fusion, providing stable, decentralized baseline power across Earth, orbit, and colonies. Above that, vast orbital solar arrays harvest energy continuously and transmit it where needed. Energy storage and transmission are near lossless. Blackouts are obsolete. Scarcity disappears. Energy is no longer an industry. It is infrastructure. Transportation becomes smooth, quiet, and constant. On Earth, cities are linked by high-speed ground systems moving faster than flight once did, without noise, pollution, or delay. Aviation remains, but is clean, efficient, and integrated seamlessly into urban life. Across oceans, fully automated ships move materials continuously, optimized down to minutes and grams. Distance still exists, but friction does not. Space is no longer a destination. It is where humanity lives. Earth's orbit hosts vast rotating habitats, easier to scale than planets, easier to maintain, easier to adapt. The Moon functions as an industrial and logistical hub. Mars supports mature, self-sustaining societies. Asteroids supply raw materials without damaging Earth. Travel between Earth, orbit, the Moon, and Mars is routine, measured in days, not months. Beyond this, automated probes and long-duration missions explore the outer solar system and nearby stars. Humanity becomes multi-world, and cautiously multi-star. With survival no longer the central concern, civilization changes. Conflict still exists, but it is procedural, not violent. Status is earned through contribution, not dominance. Power is temporary, limited, and constrained by systems. Artificial intelligence supports civilization quietly, never ruling, always assisting. Technology fades into the background. Reliable, invisible, expected. Of course, this is only a thought experiment, a theoretical timeline, a question about what might have been, not a claim about what should have happened. History is complex, humanity is imperfect, and progress is never guaranteed. But exploring ideas like this helps us understand the true cost of division and the power of cooperation over time. If you found this interesting, I'd love to hear what you think. Do you agree with this timeline? Do you think humanity could really have reached this level? Or do you think conflict was unavoidable? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoy long-form thought experiments about history, time, and the future, consider liking the video, it really helps the channel. And if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.